Alright. Hello there, everybody. So here I'm working on this Headless Horseman animation. As you can see here, I already kind of drew in what the face is gonna be. And I wanted to like make it carve the pumpkin. So I made like a little green dash line to show the spacing of how I want it to come in. And then I had this first thought of like making it actually look like it's cutting into the pumpkin like you would traditionally do it. But then and whatnot. Then I realized how much this was gonna take after going through it all. So I decided to get rid of that and make a bunch of slashes through it to make it, I guess, a little more animated, inspired of just a whoosh, 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 really fast sword action coming in, and then everything falls after it to kind of show how fast the sword was moving, you know, and whatnot. And I like to show for each frame, I like to do a little orange line of where the sword should be with each frame, so I can also see how fast it's moving and if I need to speed it up or slow it down. And for this instance, I had to actually speed it up, so I had to take out a lot of extra dashes in the middle and like slow it down. So how do I explain this? For instance, a lot of the dashes in the middle of the lines I had to get rid of and then add some more dashes at the end and beginning of each line to kind of slow it down so that it can change directions and speed back up again. And whatnot. And then here I'm kind of drawing the, I guess, the whooshing lines to kind of make some sort of like effect to show what's happening and like the purpose, I guess, of the blade. And then here I am carving the pumpkin. So you can see I have the lines again to show how fast the pumpkin slices will be falling. And I would literally just cut it out of the pumpkin and make it fall to the ground. And whatnot. So this was a little hard to keep it clean and consistent because I would have to like re-cut it out over and over again, which could cause the lines to vibrate a little bit. But it did come out really, really well. And during this animation process, I forgot to add in something that I wanted to add in, which was like all the, I don't know, like the thickness of the pumpkin. You know when you carve it, it's like super thick and it's got like that bright orange walling on it. I forgot to add that onto the slices that fall down, so it just looks like the pumpkin is a cardboard cutout. But I think it still gets like the idea across that it's been carved and the pieces are sliding out of it and whatnot. Here I'm starting to add a little bit of like effect with the slices, so whenever they hit the ground they could bounce or roll a little bit so it doesn't just flat hit the ground and stop, you know, it's a little unrealistic. So I made them move a little and settle down, one might say. And then here I'm simply just catching up with the rest of the pumpkin, adding in where all of it has already been cut out and whatnot, making it a little consistent looking to the best of my ability. And whatnot. I would have kind of wished that I made the slices on a separate layer. That would have made it a lot easier to move around them and actually move them instead of them being on the same layer as that pumpkin. So I had to work around that a little bit. But nothing too bad. This was a very simple process that I did. And whatnot. I also started using the lasso tool to cut things out because it was a little more sharper on the lines and edges than the eraser, which is, you know, a circle. Not like a fine line or anything. And then here, I was getting ready to start animating the hands, so you could see those like weird lines on the side of the pumpkin that make it look like it has ridiculous antennas, I guess. And then here I did, yes, a photo reference of my actual hand, so I kind of took a picture of the angle of the hand I want them to kind of like grab the pumpkin, and just simply tracing my hand can help me get the idea of how a hand needs to be drawn, and then I can draw it separately down and whatnot. And then I simply just copied and pasted and flipped it for the other hand, making them identical and whatnot. Here is the second cut of where I wanted to have the Headless Horseman like pick up his head and then twist it on his body. You know, like everything whenever you connect pieces, you would have lock-in pieces, and that's kind of showing that he's locking his head in. And it's also just a little creepy, you know. So then here I have my reference drawing of my pumpkin head, and I'm putting in the pieces like I did with my Headless Horseman model turnaround. I did the same technique to get the head to look like it's turning and whatnot, not just make it bounce around. So yeah, I'm doing the same technique here. And like his head's a little big and whatnot. So here's me just putting in the face, a lot of copy and pasting, a little bit of warping. Really gets this process a lot faster and whatnot. I think this process actually came out very clean. Oh, jeez. I didn't have a lot of problems with it. Here I wanted to kind of do a cool transition. So whenever his head kind of like clicks into place or like is looking at you straight ahead, fire starts to come out of his face, you know, like when you have a candle in there, that will cover the entire screen so that it can help guide the next transition, which is a zoom out and whatnot. And I also was working on a lot of fire animation studies at this time, so that was why I was like, I gotta do fire. I've been drawing fire so much. So I did that. Here I was working on the actual zoom out of the background first, because then I'd be able to actually have the character zoom out with it, and that would help me keep things fairly accurate. And then I like to start with the very last frame and then work backwards by making it zoom in. So I drew him at his hole, so you could see the Headless Horseman is on his horse. And in some stories I had read where the horse is also headless and or has like a skeleton head, which of course I really wanted to like do that and then have the horse's head on fire, because why not? It's super cool. So I have him zooming in and then adding like the fire dissipating around him to kind of do like the big reveal and whatnot. So here I'm kind of like making it break apart and like deteriorate as it gets colder and whatnot. And then running through it. As you can see, there's a lot going on, and I like to keep everything that's moving in different colors so I can differentiate what's happening. So like the body is a different color from the horse's body and the head, because that's gonna move, and then of course the whip is a different color so I can see that compared to everything else that's under it. And then the arm becomes a different color whenever it needs to move to create the whip motion, because that's how I want to happen. For the whip to strike, spooking the horse, making it run off screen, and then for the Headless Horseman to like dump a bucket of blood over the camera and whatnot. So I'll have the horse kind of jump up, do like that. I feel like it's almost like a heroic pose when the horse jumps up and then like goes neigh. And then moves his arms and legs down. You know that like epic heroic pose that every dude on a horse does. So I had to have that. And whatnot. And what was really funny is that I used a video, a reference video of a horse jumping sorry, I lost my train of thought. Was like jumping but overextended and ended up flipping over and whatnot. So I was able to really see how the horse extended and whatnot. Here you can see I'm adding in the ears, because I did a little study to see what the ears do with the horse's emotion and whatnot. And I looked at some videos whenever horses were spooked, and a lot of times their ears were pointed back. So I wanted to do that. As well as like whenever they jump up, they also kind of tuck them back a little. Here, you can see like this weird tail that I had put on top of the head. That is the motion of the flame that I wanted to have on the head. And then the circle that comes off of it is like the particles that break off of the fire and whatnot. I also had decided to put ears in after because it's a skeleton head. They don't have ears. But I was like, I can make it look like the ears are a part of the flame and that they slightly move a little bit with the flame, which I did kind of do. I maybe have gotten a little lazy with that part and whatnot. So I actually really enjoyed drawing the fire animation on the horse because it came out really nice and it moved very nice. So here I'm working on the whip motion again, of course also using reference to see how far up the arm goes and whatnot. And I used like professional whip guys and whatnot, and then I also added like a small little action to show when the whip like snaps. Here I'm redrawing the front portion of the legs because they looked weird and whatnot, and then drawing the knees to show how they move up and down. Just doing quick little motions. Here I'm working more on the fire of the head, kind of bringing that home. At this portion of this animation, when the horse like jumps up, I wanted the viewers to kind of really focus on the horse more than the rider. So that's why I kind of had a lot of the flame cover the rider's head and whatnot. And then here, I wanted this to happen like really fast. So, of course I started with the head to kind of see how it would move because where the head goes, the body comes after. So I wanted to make him like dart off to the camera and like really come closer. So here he starts to turn and whatnot. Doing like a powerful jump, I guess, and then it's going up and down, and you can see like one of the very last few frames, the rider will kind of reach up way high and like dump the bucket and whatnot. And I kind of had the rider react to the horse moving really fast by making him kind of bounce up and down like you would if you were actually on a horse. And I remember that because it kind of hurts a little until you move with the horse more. So, and here I'm drawing like the blood that covers the entire screen so that it kind of, you know, makes a big old finish. Here I'm redrawing in the ears and then the fire again. Which is a lot of like just going back and redrawing bits and pieces because I like to work piece by piece instead of whole thing in each frame because I end up missing a lot of stuff, and then also it comes out a little weird if I don't because I'm focusing on something when I need to be focusing on something else. So I end up, it doesn't come out right if I move them all at the same time. I gotta go back. Here I'm actually starting the line art. So I have this really nice clean sword that I'm moving around, and then I have, I'm line arting the swipes and whatnot. Making it nice and angular because I like angular. Going back, making sure it looks good, and then I go back in and kind of add the inner lines, which with a thinner line to make it look cleaner, I guess, whenever you have different line widths. It looks nicer that way. Here, I'm starting to add in motion blur, I guess. So, it looks kind of what it looks like. It's just like drawing a bunch of lines. So I draw them at different lengths and different thickness to kind of show that it's just like whipping really fast, really cutting through the air. And that does really help drive the point that the sword is moving a lot faster than it actually is. And it looked really good in motion and whatnot. And this was kind of the first time I kind of tried this like motion blur effect that animators would do, and it worked fairly well. I think my lines were a little rough, so it wasn't as like clean or sharp lined. Here, I'm cleaning up my hands and adding shadow, and these hands actually looked really good. I wish I put that same amount of effort in the hands whenever the Headless Horseman was zoomed out and like holding the whip and the lead, because it's a little cheap looking and whatnot. Yep. Here's a lot of cleanup, making sure it looks right, having certain parts hidden behind the pumpkin and whatnot, and keeping it together and accurate, not jumping around. The sleeves. Here I'm starting to do the line art of the actual body. For this part, the body is static, so it stays still this entire shot right here. So just having it drawn first and then cut in or copied through the rest of the frames was kind of what I did. And then I redrew the arms and the hand because they were kind of rotating, so it affected how the wrinkles of the arm and the angles of the hand a little bit, which I really wish I did photo reference for the hands. I don't know why I didn't, but I didn't, even though that was kind of like the focus was the hands and the head in this shot. They look doo-doo and whatnot. Here I'm doing the line art of the pumpkin and cleaning it up, making sure it looks good. First starting out with the outline, and then we'll eventually work on the inside of the pumpkin. Doing a little more cleanup, trying to eliminate as many line intersects as possible, and whatnot. Here, I'm finally going in and drawing the inside of the pumpkin, just the cuts. Later I'll go in and do the fire, but for the most part I just wanted to focus one thing at a time. And then going back, cleaning it up. Lots of cleanup in this process, and thinking about shadows. I don't know why I don't do that with the actual sketching process. Probably because it's at that point it gets like too much information. So I like to do the shadows whenever I'm cleaning it up, because it looks more put together with the clean lines, and then I'm able to think where shadows need to go, any highlights, stuff like that. I know we haven't gotten to this part, but the color palette that I used for this pumpkin, I loved a lot. I wanted to kind of keep it in like a gloomy, gloomy color palette, so I made sure to have like all the colors kind of cold feeling and whatnot. So like the reds were a little dark, the blue was dark, and whatnot. So the fire really stood out with its very bright, warm colors.